Okay, here's a fun one. I assembled this whole part here, the back fuselage, top and bottom, with some painting done. And I took great care to cut out this area here for the A, which is, to me it gives you a cutout guide, so we did that. And I think I did one of the best jobs I've done on an F-14A, but here's the problem. I want to use BAM's early beaver tail. This is an early prototype, or almost prototype, early delivery aircraft, and this needs to go here. So this part is going to be really hard to cut since it's already assembled without damaging any of the sides or the rest of the airplane. So this part here does me no good in this build. So that's out. What that means is I got to go raid the stash, and from the stash I pulled out a new top piece and a new fuselage piece from another kit, and we're going to start with the cutting. See on here, the way that this is molded here is set up to be this exact panel line right here. So it's going to fit in here. Now on the bottom, we're going to have a little less, so we're going to have to match that up to, there's no panel line to match it up to, but we're going to have to match it up with the dimensions using kind of the parts that are here, and we're going to mark that out later. So we're going to start with the top part and get these out of the way. And to do this, you could probably drill holes, that would work. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start by scoring on the panel line that is already here, and I'm not going to worry about the back because it's all going to get cut away. Now my buddy Ryan Fernandez wanted the back end of a Tomcat, specifically the speed brakes for, let's just say a project that he might be working on. However, these are going to be, we're going to see how this cut goes. So I've already kind of cut into the speed brake with my scoring. I did this once before. I did an F-14D VX-9 from the Fightertown Decals test sheet. And that one, I actually used the AMK beaver tail, which turns out is 2 millimeters too wide for the Tamiya kit. So that required quite a bit of not just cutting out the Tamiya back end, but also cutting away the beaver tail sides like here, because it came out too wide here, too wide here. So I had to do some surgery with that one. All right, well, that gets started. I want to be careful not to damage this part, which it's probably, knowing how I cut, I probably will damage it a little bit, but we'll do our best. So I'm going to do the rest of this off camera. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep scoring this, and I'm going to score across the top, and then we're going to drill some holes and get rid of it. So that's no fun to watch. Go get a adult beverage or child beverage of your choice. Come back and join me in a few minutes when I've gotten to that point. All right, just to quickly break in here, I started a little bit of scoring. I'm actually just doing this by hand. So I've got a little bit of a line here, and I'm just going to cut right there. If you can see here, it is not, I'm not cutting on the panel line. I'm cutting about a millimeter, at least a good half a millimeter away from that panel line. So once I get this part all out, that will let me sand this back and get a much better straight line than if I were just cutting it, because cutting straight is not my best thing. I'm just using the back of a number, I think this is a number 12, it's the curved blade. And I like this a lot, actually. No fine tips to break off, and it cuts really well. So what you see is on the back side, it starts to get lighter. You even have a little bit of cut through as we get closer to the plastic. So I just kind of keep doing this, add a little more pressure now, where we've cut through. And we almost can break it here. The biggest thing is I don't want to cut outside of the lines, folks. Color inside the lines at all times on this one. All right, we are just about there. It will bend, but I'm going to just keep working on it. Keep thinking we're just about to cut clean through, and I want to make sure I get that for you. Well, that's why, folks. These posts are what I'm starting to cut in. So we're going to cut through here. We're going to grab a saw and do that. And all right, this is why you always check your work from both sides, because I don't want to lose those posts. That's how we guide this part on. And there is the first part. Now the question is going to be, when I take this here, how will this fit? And unfortunately, it will not fit with these guideposts. As you can see, these are how this attaches on here. See here, and then from the inside, they don't have a mounting, they just literally sit there, but that's how you keep the shape of the fuselage here and the curve. So that's kind of an important thing to keep. But if we look at this from the inside, these supports are great, but I don't need them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut away the top and the bottom, so that way I don't have to mess around with losing the supports for the fuselage. We just take some cutters, we take the piece, measure it off a little bit, and boom, look at that. Part's cut, part comes in. Now we are going to need to remove, I thought that would be easy. We're going to need to remove a little bit more. We're going to need to cut off here. It's not too bad. And we just keep doing this and measuring it out. I was hoping to keep this lip here to go under this part just as a good attachment so we don't have a butt join. However, we're going to have to get rid of a lot more of these parts. So we'll keep working on this. We'll see what happens. What I've already started here is removing some things from the F-14A tail. There was a anti-collision light here, and we're just remove that. And now we're going to remove this rudder braces that the original production jets had. And when they got delivered, this tail was completely solid. We're also going to fill in this formation light because that was moved, or that was originally on here. It was actually in front of the one that stayed on production. So there were two formation lights here and none up here. So we need to cut this off. Let's see if I can do this on camera a little bit. I'm using my magnifying lenses just so I can see better. And I'm just very slowly and carefully cutting this part off. We're going to have to go back over it with some sandpaper, of course. The nice thing is because it's completely smooth, I don't have to worry about damaging these panel lines that to me is so beautifully engraved on here. So let's try it a little bit differently. Okay, well, that is a start. And then we're going to just kind of scrape on this. And we're going to grab some sandpaper and make that all smooth. One of the great engineering things about this kit is how well everything just snaps together. So I've got one intake in here, and you can see with the other one, you simply push it in, touch it, and boom, it is perfect and works. So we're going to glue that one in a minute, but in the meantime, we're going to put on these doors here. They are handed, so you really can't even put them on the wrong side, which is really nice. So we're just going to prep that one slightly there and put some glue on the piece. and drop it on. That is it. It is a perfect fit, and we have seamless intakes inside and out. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's installment is brought to you by the washing machine. That's right, I'm doing laundry near the workbench for a trip that I leave on tomorrow morning. So those uniform shirts have to get washed and pressed, but in the meantime I wanted to get a little work done. So if you can handle the noise, here we go. I have here the fuselage for the F-14, and normally you put a gun vent panel in here, but today we're going to be using BAM's short gun nozzle for this VX-4 Tomcat. So these were delivered this way. Most of the jets actually were in this first block, and boom, here we have our panel. But as you notice, because this is the short vent or the short gun muzzle, if we put that in there, it doesn't fit. So we have to cut out the gun muzzle here. So we're going to do that tonight with my JLC I had for years razor saw. This thing is perfect. I love it. It's cut straight. It's the best thing I've ever had. Just making sure I make the right cuts. It's going to need to go basically this whole piece. So let's just get started. I'm actually doing this on the panel line, which we'll see how it works out. We're going to get real close here. And now we're going to cut through here. I notice on here I put the gun part in there. So what will another thing you do with normal kits, but because we're doing this modification, I forget about these things. So just taking nice and easy swipes. And then when we get close, this is going to be a little tricky. I'm just going to break this off. So we're going to have to, you know what we're going to do? We're going to just kind of score this thing in close. There you can see it's not on the panel line. It's not cutting entirely straight, but as long as it doesn't go into the area that I need to keep, I'm okay with it. And just like that, we got an errant saw mark into the radome. We'll just have to fix that later. And we can just bend that right off. There we go. One little mark we're going to fix. Now we can test out our panel here. We just need to clean up this little area here. So to do that, we'll do a little bit of carving. We're going to put these on so I can get in close and make sure I don't damage what I'm doing here. All right, here we go. The best way to do this is just take your time. All right, now we're going to switch to our file. What I really do need to invest in is something wider than this, but this is what I got. So this is what we're going to use. All right, let's try out our panel again. Well, it's going to be close. What we do need to do is bring this panel back here. And I can see when I line that up, what I may want to do is cut this tab off in the front. Actually, oop, that's what it is. This right here is going to need to come off a little more, so let's cut that off and see what happens. All right, we got it done. We cut out this little part here, and so we can fit in our short gun muzzle, but longer piece here. When I do this, what I'm finding is that this part just slightly short, and I'm finding this top piece has a little bit too hard of an angle. The printing is beautiful, the part's beautiful, but the fit is just a little slightly off. We can trim this angle down a bit, but we're gonna have to fill this up front. So what I wanted to do is I kind of took a good look at this. It looks like this part, and look at that, the dryer just stopped. So hopefully it's better audio for everybody. I could fit this, but because this part here on the back, no matter what, is short, when it fits in, what I went ahead and did is pulled out part, I think this is B18 from the kit, which goes right in. Oops. That fits right in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a hybrid here. I'm going to take this beautiful BAM part, and I'm going to cut it right here on this panel line and use the back end, which is actually, this is all one piece on the real airplane, this door. Back end from this, and then the front end from BAM, which when I line it up, I'll still need just a little bit of fill at this very front spot, which that should be easy enough to do. So for our part here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it not on the panel line, because I don't want to have any space. There we go. Now this part, if we can see it well enough, still has the panel line on it. So we're going to trim that back down, and we get rid of that. That goes on here. The real trick is going to be cutting the BAM part. So I only have one of those. I got plenty of the Tamiya kit parts. That's going to fit right on. So we're going to cut this right behind the panel line and work our way back on this one. All right, what we have here is the kit part done. You can see that there's still a little bit in front of the panel line there. And the BAM part also has a little bit in front of the panel line. With this, though, it's keyed, so you can't. Be really nice if I could just slide it forward and make a joint like that, but it doesn't work because of these little step downs here. So we got one in here, that'll fit there, and then our small muzzle will fit right in there with that. And what we have is a perfect, let me get this closer, a perfect alignment. This part by BAM, the short gun nozzle, is a beautiful piece of art. I love it. It even has the plug for the muzzle, which is what it had. There actually was no gun for these aircraft while they had this short muzzle. It was a placeholder until they got the production stuff figured out and built. So these things are beautiful. I could have made it work easily without doing this change, but thought I'd give myself some more work. I think I'm going to conclude tonight. I know it's not been that long, but the dryer's going. I got a early morning call to get to the airplane. So peace out. Hope you enjoyed this part. Have a great night, everybody. Good morning. Today's update is going to cover a couple of things I just got done. A little bit of bench time recently, but not very much. What I'm using here today is SMS Surfacer Black. Love this stuff. I still am a big fan, and I still think that my favorite thing of all time is this Mr. Finishing Surfacer 1500 Black by Gunzy, but I just don't like mixing. So if I can pour something straight out of the bottle, not have to mix, this stuff is like 95% of what Surfacer Black is for me. I don't think it's quite as fine, but I really enjoy using it, and it's kind of been my go-to so far. So let's get into what we have here. Today we have our tails. So I'll bring one up here for you to see. This tail here, you can see it's still a little messy, but there is no longer a formation light here. We got a little bit here and here we need to kind of still fill in, and cleaning up the rudder braces that were there from the original A kit is still pretty messy, so we need to do some sanding. And then on the other one, you can see here, this one as well. This one's a little bit cleaner. We still have a little bit of ghost formation light there. I did have to do a little bit of cutting or repaneling just right in here, because you can almost still see where those rudder brace pieces were. But it's getting there. I also, once I think I sand it down with sandpaper and use this Surfacer Black stuff, it'll be ready for primer. The next thing is going to be our fuselage here, and we just have to fill in the front, which is fine. Flipping the backside, I cut a little bit away here, so we needed to brace this, and then I just put a piece of plastic here just to keep the the spacing for that here. So we're going to prime that. Actually, we're going to fill this little hole first with a little bit of styrene, and then prime it and go from there. One thing I just want to point out is the cut is actually correct. It's right on that radome. In fact, I cut it away from the radome and then moved it in. So just a little bit of work. The piece is gorgeous. You can see just the correct amount of depression here for the gun muzzle, which did not have a gun. That was a blanked off plate. So this is absolutely perfectly designed that way. So there you go. That's what an hour or 6 or so at the workbench last night yielded. And we're going to move on to the next thing. Bye. All right, next thing for today, we've got the beaver tail here. I've been cutting away. I had to trim a bunch of things here. It's just the way it works. So trim in here, cut this way. I cut these supports out a little bit here and here just to make it fit. And then certainly on the kit part, there's a lot to get rid of here. There's a lot of fine tuning in this area and up here. I do like that this fits right on a panel line, so it's easy to cut and see. After lots of test and trial, this should now just slide right on here. Yeah, I mean, it fits perfectly like that. There certainly will be a little bit of just a little bit of filling along the way, but that's just any part that's going to be there. And then on the bottom, took a little bit more work to kind of get this, although it's not even a straight line for me. This actually does fit on really nice now. So the bottom looks good, the top looks good. So here we are with a little bit wider angle view, so you can see that going in there, and I can then tilt this back. There's just a little bit needed here on the bottom. There we go. So now that fits pretty much flush on the bottom and flush on the top. All right, so we did a little more sweetening on this part. So now trims perfectly in here. And when we look down here, there is just a little bit of a lip right here on this part. What I found was, I kind of really studied this part. The casting is beautiful. I love this thing. I love having the dielectric panels on. BAM did a great job capturing everything on here, and I like how sturdy it is. I like the way that all these struts, strengthening struts work. But this, so I turn this over just to make the light better. Right in here, there is just a slight dip. So it's flat across here, and then it just has a slight dip here. We're going to line this part up dead on for the top, and we're going to deal with our bottom right here. So absolutely worth it. A little bit of basic modeling skills, no big deal. And I can't wait to see this big boat-tailed Tomcat. Turns out I had a few more minutes today, so I wanted to take care of just a couple other little kind of almost housekeeping chores for this kit. You can see I got panels masked off here. One of the things that gets missed a lot on builds is this little note. So it says fill using putty, etc. So it's cutting off these two little vents. Those are there on just the D, and this panel here is a D only thing. So with that in mind, went ahead and fill this up. There is a panel line right here that runs all the way down that we need to keep. So it's hard to see in this light, but what I've done is I've masked this panel line right up to the fasteners. So we're going to fill in the fasteners, this panel line, and this panel line across here with the fasteners. All right, to do this job, I have picked Mr. Surfacer 500. Gave it a good shake, and we're going to pop it open. Maybe give it a little bit more of a stir here just to get kind of the thicker stuff. And take our part, and that's too much, and just drop this right on here. All right, this is a lot, but I want to make sure I get it in. All right, we're going to give that a couple minutes to dry, and then we're going to come back over it with a little bit of IPA and clean that up the easy way. So, okay, the next thing we've done here is I've masked off these little parts here. This is where the top and the bottom of the fuselage come together. I see a lot of models that don't address that seam. There's only a couple places on this kit where those seams have to be dealt with, and this is one on the front. I'm using sprue, was it Mr. Dissolved Putty actually, but sprue goo I think is kind of the also generic term for it. This is basically just melted sprue, which I love because it's really easy to clean up with. Sands basically just like plastic. So you got to get a bit of it in there though, because it will, this gap, especially on this side, was a little bit big. I didn't kind of push the leading edge of these intake tops together, so I've got a little bit more of a gap here than I would like, but it is easy to handle. Run a little bit in there, and on this side we're going to run a little bit in there, and I think we have exactly what we need. We'll come back and sand that down and reapply and see how it goes from there. Even though I put a thick layer on, it just didn't, if you see, get a little closer here, it just didn't want to fill in totally. So I went back with my Mr. Dissolved Putty here and filled in some more spots here. Also on the top, filled in here. This is really kind of cool because on the D or the late A, even the B, anything that has the GPS dome, Tamiya made this as a separate part, so you could put the GPS dome piece in. So for the A, you got to put this blank plate in, panel line that just gets filled in. So again, Mr. Dissolved Putty comes to the rescue, drop that in there. And other than that, we sanded off up here on the intakes. That is nice and smooth, ready to prime again. I also went ahead and put a little bit more on the tails here. There was just some ghost seams on both sides of these, so a little bit of Dissolved Putty on there, give that a little bit of time to dry, sand it, boom. Can't wait to get to painting. Hopefully that's coming up soon. Next step is going to be our boat tail, which we've now figured out all the fit issues. That's going to slide in just like this, and then we'll have a little bit of just because my cuts are not perfectly straight, there should be a little bit of filler in there, and we'll be ready to move on to final construction and paint. Here we go. See ya. Well, since we're going to use some aftermarket res kit landing gear on this thing, I figured we couldn't not do a little bit of detailing in the landing gear bay, and as much as I just want to move on with this build, got to do it. So here we go. This is actually the Deco book. What I'm talking about, what we're going to add are these piping here, these lines here. So here we have a kit part, and what I have to do that with is an assortment of USA lead wires. First I thought 1.0 millimeter would be great, but that's actually fairly thick. If you can see kind of here, we need 4 of these going out of here, so that's gonna be a little bit too big. So I also have 0.8, 0.6, and I used 0.8 on the last build. This time I'm going to do 0.6 just to make it a little bit smaller and easier to work with in the space we have. So let's get this out and get working on it. I find a lot of the stuff is just easier to do by hand, even though I do have a Dremel. So we're going to start this. There we go. There's that hole. All right, here we go. Just kind of measuring these out. What we're gonna do here, I think, is kind of get a good idea. Start from there, and then I'm gonna give myself just some extra to work with and call it right about there. So that's the distance I'm gonna use. Now what I'm gonna do is take this, put it down, and then we're just gonna kind of see if we can just straighten it out a little bit. Use about the same length on each of these and cut ourselves another one. Nice thing with this lead wire is it's super soft, super easy to cut, and super easy to position. It barely even takes touching. So I could go 3 or 4 here. The reality is the aircraft has 4. 3 might actually be about as thick as I want to do just from a detail standpoint. And we'll cut that there. All right, and we have our 4 pieces now. But we used to start here and just kind of make this work. We're going to have to use super glue to get that down, obviously. And start with 1. I want to make sure that I give enough room to go in front of the landing gear. The landing gear is going to go here. We're going to get that out and test it out, but something about like that should be pretty good. Let's see. I went ahead and grabbed, this is the Res Kit F-14 landing gear. Let's get in here. We got our parts, and for now all I'm going to need is this, and this is just the part that's going to go into the front landing gear bay. So let's get rid of this for a second, and we're going to cut these apart. That should be like that. We get a good look at what Res Kit gives us. It's not bad. All right. All right, after a lot of trial and error and a lot of bad words, what I was able to do is get these 4 wires super glued in here. What I actually had to do is pour, I tried to put them in one at a time, didn't work. I tried to glue the 4 together and then put them in, that didn't work. So what I did was just held these in place, all 4 with my hands, and then dumped super glue across the top here. So super glue basically goes from here to here, which is fine because we're not going to bend them until back here. That was annoying. It sucked. I can't wait for someone to actually make landing gear bays 3D printed with all the detail, like that kind of detail in the landing gear bay. I'm going to leave it at that. Well, thanks for joining this video already in progress. Sort of forgot to start filming what's going on, but boom, that's future. This is NATO black and red brown Tamiya. That is mostly distilled water, some future, and a mix of these. And I'm doing a wash on these parts. So this is also known as, I think Matt Doug's model is called the Magic Wash, and that just stuck. But I'm just using it as an acrylic wash and basically just spreading it. I actually don't think I have enough pigment, enough paint in here. If I were to do it again, or actually next time I do it, I'll probably just use inks instead of the paint. But in the meantime, I'm just kind of sloshing it around. You can see on here, just kind of giving everything a good dirty coat. It's going to be in the landing gear bay. Unfortunately, get a little bit of tide marks on this, so probably need to add some flow aid to it, which I don't have. So we're just kind of going back over it with fresh stuff here, but it's going to be buried so much down under there that it'd be okay to do it this way. Yeah, this is actually looking pretty good. I like the way of it. I normally just use like Tamiya black panel liner, which is a little stark, so I've used, after that I started using dark brown, which actually I really like. Now that I'm using this, with it being acrylic, I'm kind of afraid to go back and use the enamel stuff on top of it without giving it a serious clear coat. But for now, I like what it's doing. We're good with this. There it is, the Res Kit landing gear. That's the front one. I did black, just black primer, Mr. Surfer 1500, and then SMS gloss white. This has fast become my favorite white. 1 pass gets it pretty good. 2 passes, basically it's fully covered. And I think you can see there that it's pretty, looks pretty good. I left just enough of the shadow with the black. I'm going to actually pick out some lines here in black. We're going to do chrome for the front, and then I'm going to give it a wash a little bit later. So, oh, hey, by the way, before you go, check this out. I was actually on the phone on hold and decided to go ahead and glue on the BAM boat tail. So, bam, that's done. Looks good. We'll get a better look at it a little bit later. Okay, just to give you a quick idea, this is the difference between a fresh white paint and this wash, and just kind of adding the wash and mixing it around. Now this is a little heavier on this one, but just kind of keep using it, working it, doing it, moving it around. wiping it off, adding it back, and then you get kind of this cool effect. Well, it's that time to do a little bit of prime painting. I got Mr. Mahogany Surface from 1000 mixed with Mr. Leveling Thinner, about 70% leveling thinner, 15 psi, and here we go. Let's get this thing started. This is just going to be a primer coat for kind of for testing more than priming anything. But right off the bat, I want to see how the BAM tail fit in, how my work did here. So we're going to start off with that. I made this extra thin. Actually, I may have made it too thin when I think about it. Now for this tail, wow, that paint's almost not even, it's like literally absorbing the paint. I washed this just in warm soap and water after it was attached. So I'm not sure how this will work. We're just going to go really light on the resin. This is the first time I will have painted a large piece of 3D printed resin. So we'll see how this primer does with that. And right off the bat, we can see there's definitely going to need to be a little bit of seam work done there, but that's okay. That's what this is for. Now, if I got really lucky and did a good job, this could be the regular primer. This side, where we did filled in the panel, doesn't look too bad. May need to come back and do a little bit more work on it. But for now, it's okay. I'm going to come back to my tails here. Those were black. I sanded them all down. I may have gotten the primer just too thin, because it's kind of evaporating off color-wise. You see it's just not even coloring, or not covering the black that's on there. Good morning, sports fans. Well, we got primer on here. It's splotchy, but it's actually really smooth. It's kind of the way I like it right now. So this was just kind of a test. I'm not really worried about getting it completely uniform and solid. As long as it's smooth. I think this actually, it gives enough grip for the paint, which when using the enamel, or excuse me, the acrylic paints, let's start that all over. Cut. Okay, take two. So when using the lacquer paints, let's be clear about that. When using the lacquer paints, it gets a pretty good bite on the plastic as is, but this kind of level of primer I like. Normally when I do black, I do it all the way, but this brown stuff varies from kind of like a dark tan to a really dark brown. So I actually think this will look better with gold gray over the top of it. Just get that on light coats. It'll give some good weathering. But in the meantime, what we do need to do, I got my Mr. Dissolve Putty here, give it a quick shake, is fill in a few panel line here and here will need to be filled in. And then on the back, Tamiya did a really cool job. This panel, if you can see right here, there is a panel right there from this actuator for the horizontal stabs here. But here and here, that needs to be filled in. To get this started, right here, we're just going to use Mr. Dissolve Putty and just kind of work it into the seam here. The nice thing is, because there is kind of a natural panel line here, or break in the fuselage, I'm not really worried about it going all the way in and filling completely. I think that's pretty good for there. Now we're going to work over here. Sorry, I stopped talking, just concentrating on where this goes. Just a little more in here while we're at it. It does kind of react with the primer, so you don't want to move it around too much. I could actually just sand it down and work on the plastic, but there we go. That's what we're going to use for now. I am going to grab this fuselage here. We're going to work on just a tiny little area. And there we go. Okay. I think that's what we needed to do for now. We'll let that dry and move on to something else a little more exciting. Be back, gotcha.